We'll now move to Mr. Christopherson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Auditor General and your team. I'd like to focus, Chair, if I may, on your special message to us. This doesn't happen very often, thank goodness. I've only seen it once or twice in my 13 years, I get 12, 13 years on here. And I want to just set it up by reading your opening paragraph. And keep in mind that this is the process by which the Auditor General brings problems. If there's problems at all in terms of his work, this is how it's done. It's a message to us, and then it's in our lap. The opening paragraph of this message, Chair, is, quote, "I have prepared this message to inform the House of Commons, as subsection 7(1)(b) of the Auditor General Act instructs me to do, that we did not receive all the information we needed for 2 of the audits we presented as part of the spring 2017 reports of the Auditor General to the Parliament of Canada." Further on, in both, quoting, "In both cases, Finance Canada confirmed the existence of the information we requested. However, as the department considered this information to be confidential to Cabinet, it determined that it could not provide the information to our auditors." Now, we understand clearly that there are certain things that are exempt from your reach, and that's Cabinet confidentiality, where there's advice to ministers, recommendations to the government, and anything pertaining to the debate that takes place. That's confidential, and it should remain so. All the information, however, analysis, reports, any kind of submissions that feed into that recommendation, they're all fair game because they're just analysis. And oftentimes what the Auditor General needs to do is to confirm that it was done, which is the case here, actually. Now, as I understand this, and it gets a little bit complicated, but as I understand it, you, Auditor General, were denied the information initially, and my words, the government, current government, was brought kicking and screaming to the point where they finally passed an order in council that released the information as far back as the beginning of this government. So, number one, a severe crack on the wrist for having to be forced to do what they should have done by law, but an acknowledgement that they did do the right thing at the end of the day and that the immediate problem is solved. However, we still have 2 problems as I see it, Chair. One is there's more information needed. By the way, this audit is not concluded. It remains unfinished business because the Auditor General cannot get the information. So the government, again, kicking and screaming, has brought us as far back as when they took power. But going back, we don't have that information, and apparently it's the clerk of the Privy Council or someone in a senior bureaucratic position who has the responsibility to protect the actual things that need to be kept confidential from previous governments. So we sorted it out with the current government, but not with the previous. And I know, well, I'll ask, I don't think yet you have a definitive legal answer for us, and we may end up, Chair, calling in the parliamentary law clerk, because as far as I'm concerned, the right of Parliament to demand papers, documents, and persons is absolute. And so it seems to me that if Parliament says, we want that document, that there's a way to get it, especially since it's not captured by Cabinet confidentiality. I've got a minute left, thanks. So we need to find a way to force that document into the light of day as the law commands that it should, but we also need to be riding shotgun and putting pressure on the Privy Council to live up to their word, to not just do the order in council change. I don't have time to get into the details, but the other thing the Auditor General wants going forward is based on a first principles approach, so it's not every document listed as they come along, but rather a set of principles that says these type of documents you can access, and that'll remove a lot of this. So I didn't leave a lot of time, but just any thoughts you have on that, Auditor General, especially correcting me if I've got any of my understandings wrong.
Well, Yeah, go ahead. I will give you extra time, but there won't be any more supplementary questions while he answers. Go ahead, sir.
I mean, I think generally the way that you've characterized a lot of it, from a factual point of view at least, is right. What we now have is an order in Council that would allow us to get access to the budget documents that we asked for after November 2015. But what we were looking for was analysis, and some of that analysis would have been done before November 2015. So, that order in Council, as you said, would not cover that. So even getting access to the analysis that was done after November 2015, which the order in Council would give us the right to do, but which we have not yet, of course, asked for, so we haven't actually received any of that information. That wouldn't allow us to come back and tell you whether, throughout the course of all of these tax measures, Finance Canada did all of the analysis that they should have done. So I think it's important to remember that. Certainly, as I said in my opening statement, I consider that the most recent order in Council to be a good step, and hopefully that shows the willingness on the part of the government to continue to work with us to find a lasting solution. But the order in Council isn't sufficient. It isn't going to solve the problem long term, because again, it's the same type of approach to fixing the problem as we've seen before, and those types of solutions tend to work for a while, but then another problem crops up. So we need to get to a better solution, and hopefully, the order in Council is a signal from the government that we will be able to work with them to get to that long-lasting solution.
We'll now move to Mr. Area, please. Mr. Area, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Christopherson made a very long statement. If I can recall it correctly, he did say that all the analysis, the reports which goes into preparation of documents that are covered under cabinet confidentiality is a fair game and it should be made accessible. Is that correct?
So our position is that according to the Auditor General Act, we have the right to access any information we need to do our work. That's clear in the Auditor General Act. We acknowledge we don't need access to the Cabinet confidence information, the discussions in Cabinets, the recommendations to Cabinet. We certainly feel our position is that any of the analysis that's been done by civil servants, that we should be getting access to that information.
Because I'm a bit confused, because you said in response to his question, what he mentioned is generally correct. So it seems to imply that any analysis reports that are being there, which went into making decisions for the Cabinet, should be made available to you.
Yes, that's our position. Anything that was an analysis, any reports that the Department did, leading up to the recommendations. We don't want to see the recommendations, but any of the analysis that they did, yes, we feel that we should be getting access to that, and we feel that our Act requires that we get access to that information.
And he also talked about the right of Parliament and seems to imply that the right of the Office of Auditor General is same as the right of Parliament. Is that correct?
So I can't comment on that. All I can comment on is that according to the Auditor General Act, we are supposed to be provided any information we need to do our job. If we are not given that, what we are to do is we are to report it to Parliament. Again, that's clear in the Auditor General Act. From there, it's in the hands of Parliament to do whatever Parliament can do with the issue. So I don't know, all of the intricacies of the powers of Parliament in that instance. All I know is what our Act tells us that we have access to.
As I said, once again, my confusion came because you started your reply stating that what you mentioned is generally correct. It would be good if you can go through the statement, what Mr. Christopherson said, and your response to that, and if there's any ambiguity, to clear that at a later stage, not now.
So I can do that. Certainly what I was responding to was his description of the situation that we had, the fact that it was going before Parliament. Obviously, I don't know the details, so when I said generally correct, it was because I was trying to acknowledge that I didn't know the details of what Parliament could do and that type of thing. But I'll go back through his statement, and if the committee wants me to provide clarification, I can do that.
We'll now go to Mr. Christopherson, please. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. And if I just can, I mean, if my friend Mr. Arya wants to get into the weeds on this, we can. The fact is that what made this particular situation different, I'm not letting go. I'm not letting go. What made this particularly different is that the analysis that would normally be available as a standalone document that could readily be accessed was this time included within a cabinet submission, and as a rule that would be part of the recommendation, that would be off-site. So we had this overlap of, well, I'm entitled, the Auditor General is entitled to get at it, but it's contained within a document labeled such that otherwise they couldn't. So it's taken all this time for Sunny Ways to suddenly realize that you cannot just stand on this technicality, that analysis needs to come up, or an admission that the analysis wasn't done. But I'm more than willing to get into, and we will be getting into the detailed weeds on this, because I do believe that we're ultimately going to have to bring in, I could be wrong, but my experience tells me we're going to need to bring in the parliamentary law clerk. The Auditor General right now cannot tell us with any certainty whether or not we have the power, and if we do, how do we go about exercising it to get information that goes before the mandate of the current government. Well, I think I'd be surprised if there's anybody on this committee that's going to take the position, well, it's not that important that the Auditor General get everything. As long as he gets, most of it, it'll sort of be okay. That's not the way we do things around here. And so we'll bring in, I would think, the parliamentary law clerk who will, and I would hope that in public, as a bit of a service, that we would have as much of that discussion public so that people can also watch and learn as we talk about how the law works, and then it would be my suggestion we'd move into camera and then take the instant case, and then we would get legal advice, which would be properly in camera in terms of actions that we may or may not want to take or to make to Parliament, which is the ultimate reservoir of all this power.